For more than 4 decades, Tom Silva felt like part of America's living room. The calm, steady master craftsman viewers trusted on Ask This Old House. But while millions admired him for his skill and humility, few ever suspected the extraordinary truth he kept hidden away from the spotlight. Since 1999, Tom has been quietly pouring his own time, money, and heart into something far bigger than television. Something so personal that only 3 families knew the full story. And for years, they kept their promise to protect his secret. What he's been doing in silence will change the way you see him forever. It began with California wildfires, Massachusetts storm disasters, and a hidden foundation no one knew Tom Silva had been quietly funding for more than 2 decades. When the truth finally leaked in 2025, it shattered everything fans thought they knew about the gentle carpenter from television. What Tom had been doing with his own fortune secretly, quietly, and without ever taking credit left even those closest to him stunned. This wasn't the Tom Silva the public had watched on screen for 40 years. This was a man driven by something deeper, shaped by a life built from sweat, sacrifice, and the haunting memory of what it means to rebuild from nothing. Tom Silva was born on January 17, 1947, in Lexington, Massachusetts, into a family where work never ended and every pair of hands mattered. His father shaped stone. His older brother Dick was already learning the craft, and Tom grew up as the youngest in a house that felt more like a workshop than a living space. He spent his childhood watching his father repair old New England stone walls, breathing in sawdust, and learning the slow, patient language of wood and stone. By age 8, he already knew how to mix mortar with his own hands. He stained furniture beside his father, handled antique tools that bit into his palms, and made the small mistakes that slowly sharpened him into a craftsman. At 10, he picked up a hammer on his own and began framing small sheds with his uncles. Around that same time, a chisel slipped and carved a scar into his left hand, a mark he carried for life. A permanent reminder of the first lesson every builder learns: respect the tools, or pay for it. Between the ages of 10 and 16, his world grew bigger with every project. The one he never forgot began when his family decided to build a fallout shelter beneath their 1787 colonial home. Cold War fear was everywhere, and the project felt massive and ominous. Tom helped dig a 20 by 40 by 12-foot pit by hand. Working with shovels, jackhammers, and muscle, he hauled boulders out of the ground, framed the entire structure, and helped finish it board by board. It took 2 years of hard labor. When the shelter was complete, something shifted inside him. The building wasn't just a skill, it was his identity. He realized he loved watching something grow out of the dirt, brick by brick, day after day. Those early years shaped him more than school ever could. After graduating Lexington High School in 1965, Tom shocked everyone by turning down a college scholarship. He believed classrooms couldn't teach him what real work already had. His family's history, their pride in labor, and the story of his great-great-grandfather who'd fought in the Battle of Lexington all pushed him toward a life of building things that lasted. He trusted his hands more than any textbook, and in 1966, at just 19, he and his brother Dick took a leap. With one pickup truck and $500 worth of borrowed tools, they launched Silva Brothers Construction in Arlington, Massachusetts. They took every small job they could find that first year: attic remodels, tiny repairs, patchwork upgrades, anything that would pay. The work came through word of mouth, and it wasn't long before neighbors were telling neighbors about the 2 young brothers who refused to cut corners. In 1968, Tom completed his first solo project, a kitchen expansion in Belmont. He milled every cabinet himself out of solid oak, using nothing but hand tools. No power saws, no modern equipment. A blizzard hit in the middle of the job, delaying the lumber delivery. But Tom worked through the ice and snow and finished the project in just 12 days. He earned $2,000 for that job, a fortune for a young contractor. The homeowner raved about the work, and suddenly, more doors opened. Tom learned early that persistence and craftsmanship would carry him further than luck ever could. By 1970, Silva Brothers Construction expanded into roofing work. Tom introduced a technique that used reclaimed barnwood as a base layer under shingles, saving clients nearly 20% on materials. The idea caught on quickly, boosting the business at a time when small contractors fought for every job. But none of the early successes would prepare Tom for the day everything changed. The storm so powerful it reshaped the way he saw construction, responsibility, and eventually, the role he would play far beyond Massachusetts. The roof collapse changed everything. One moment he was fastening shingles, the next he was dodging falling timber as the structure gave way beneath him. Tom barely escaped injury. The shock of that close call left a deep mark. From that day forward, he and his brother refused to rely on assumptions or shortcuts. They upgraded every safety standard, inspected every brace twice, and built with methods that put strength before speed. What could have been a disaster became the turning point that defined Silva Brothers Construction. Their name became synonymous with careful planning and work built to last. Life kept moving, and in 1972 Tom married Susan, the woman who would become the quiet backbone of the entire company. She transformed their garage into a makeshift office, balanced the books, took calls, and handled the constant stream of paperwork that contractors rarely enjoy. With Susan steadying the business behind the scenes, Tom was free to take on bigger, more ambitious projects. In 1974, he tackled a barn conversion that required dismantling 200-year-old beams by hand, a brutal job that demanded patience and strength. Susan kept the company afloat during those long days, proving that their partnership brought a kind of stability skill alone could never offer. Then came the crisis of 1975. A frustrated client blamed Tom and his brother for a faulty foundation and filed a lawsuit that threatened to destroy the business. They had to mortgage their home just to deal with the legal costs. Instead of battling with words, Tom made a decision that stunned everyone. Every night for 3 straight months, he returned to the site and rebuilt the entire structure by himself. He worked quietly, after hours, often long past midnight, until the job was flawless. The client eventually apologized, dropped the lawsuit, and recommended them to others. That story spread through town and sealed Tom's reputation as a craftsman who stood by his work no matter how difficult the circumstances. A little more than a decade later, fate stepped in again. In 1986, this old house producer Russell Moorish spotted Tom at a trade show expertly cutting dovetail joints. Tom explained the process with such clarity and simplicity that Moorish took notice. Soon after, he appeared unannounced at one of Tom's job sites with a camera crew and asked him to repair a sagging porch beam on the spot. Tom completed the fix in under 2 hours while the cameras rolled, calm, focused, and completely unfazed. That unexpected audition earned him the role of the show's general contractor. A few months later, Tom made his first on-screen appearance in Season 6, Episode 1. Aired in March 1986, he rebuilt a Victorian staircase railing using reclaimed chestnut, carefully working the brittle wood until it regained its original beauty. His authenticity struck viewers immediately. He wasn't interested in acting, and he openly admitted he'd never watched television before joining the show. Everything he knew came from real jobs, real mistakes, and real experience. That honesty made audiences trust him from the start. There were tense moments, too. During the 1987 Nantucket project, Bob Vela suggested using power nailers to speed up filming. Tom refused and insisted on hand nailing all 500 shiplap boards the traditional way, just as craftsmen had done in the 1800s. The slower method put production behind schedule and irritated the crew. But Tom wouldn't compromise on quality. In the end, his persistence earned respect from both the team and the viewers. It reminded everyone what this old house truly represented. By 1988, fans had started noticing another charming habit. Whenever Tom sanded wood or worked on detailed carpentry, he whistled Portuguese folk tunes learned from his family. Those soft melodies drifting through the background became part of his signature, an effortless window into his childhood and the culture that shaped him. But in 1989, the work took a frightening turn. While filming in Bedford, a scaffold collapsed while Tom was repairing exterior siding. A cameraman was standing directly beneath the falling structure. Without thinking, Tom shoved the man out of harm's way and took the fall himself. He fractured his right wrist, but refused to stop filming. With his wrist splintered, he continued working, determined not to let the crew down. The team never forgot that moment. It revealed his character more clearly than any episode ever could. Tom Silva's rise wasn't loud or flashy. It was built on integrity, humility, and a lifetime of showing up for the people around him. It happened in 1990 inside a silent, collapsing 1790 Colonial in Concord, Massachusetts, a house so tired it seemed to breathe its last with every step. Most builders would have approached it like any other renovation, patching, replacing, modernizing, but not Tom. He treated the home like a living artifact, a window into another century. He tracked down original pegged joints made from salvaged ship timbers, not because it made the job easier, but because it honored the truth of the house. Then he spent more than 400 hours hand-cutting mortise and tenon joints, every stroke a tribute to builders who had worked there more than 200 years earlier. The work was slow and punishing on his hands, but when the project was complete, people felt something rare: authenticity. The New York Times wrote about the restoration. Preservation societies praised it, and builders across New England began copying his approach to old-world craftsmanship. That single forgotten house became the spark that carried Tom's name far beyond Massachusetts. 2 years later, in 1992, he returned to this old house with another challenge in Nevin floors: the curse of every pre-1900 home. Most builders grabbed shims, did their best, and hoped nothing shifted later. But Tom wasn't satisfied with hope. During the Belmont House overhaul, he developed what people later called the Silva shim method. He layered thin cedar wedges in a precise interlocking pattern that allowed him to dial in the exact height without forcing the structure. The result was subtle but revolutionary. No cracking, no squeaking, floors that settled naturally instead of fighting the house. Viewers at home noticed the difference immediately. Trade schools across New England adopted the technique, and soon, every carpenter working on a pre-1900 home knew the phrase Silva shims like it was a rule passed down through generations. Then came 1994, a moment that could have ended in disaster. Tom was doing a live demo on this old house, calmly cutting with a handsaw when the blade suddenly snapped and whipped backward toward his leg. The set froze. The crew panicked. Tom didn't. He wrapped the wound on camera and quipped, "Tools have minds of their own." Viewers didn't just love the moment, they respected him for how calmly he handled real danger. The clip was replayed for years and became a catalyst for renewed conversations about job site safety. The message was simple: even masters bleed, but true craftsmen stay in control. In 1995, the show sent him to a Newton attic conversion where the project took a personal turn. His nephew Charlie joined the crew, eager, talented, and determined to prove himself. The attic needed custom corbels carved from butternut wood. Tom insisted on carving them by hand because the strength and visual harmony mattered. Charlie pushed for prefabricated corbels to save time. The argument that followed wasn't really about what it was about what the trade should be: tradition versus convenience, craftsmanship versus shortcuts. In the end, Tom held firm, and the finished project proved him right. Years later, Charlie admitted that those standards, the ones he fought against, were the very lessons that shaped him into a better builder. In 1996, Tom pushed Silva Brothers construction into a new era by expanding the business with a dedicated mill shop. But he didn't fill it with shiny modern machines. He went backward in time. He personally restored and calibrated a 1920s planer until it produced flawless, edge-glued panels with the kind of precision modern equipment rarely achieves. It wasn't nostalgia, it was commitment. Tom understood that excellence begins not only with skill, but with the tools that honor the craft itself. Those panels were eventually featured in a high-profile Boston Museum exhibit showcasing American craftsmanship done the hard way with period tools, precise handwork, and patience that modern builders rarely use anymore. The exhibit gained national attention and opened people's eyes to an idea Tom had been proving for decades: restoring the past doesn't mean erasing it. You can breathe new life into old homes without breaking their soul. And Tom showed that truth again and again with every project he touched. As the years rolled on, the work kept coming, and his reputation only grew stronger. In October 2002, his very first Ask This Old House segment aired. The project took him to a historic home in Woburn, Massachusetts, with a slate roof that had been leaking for years. Slate roofs can last more than a century, so most homeowners think they're almost indestructible. Tom knew better. He inspected the roof and found exactly 47 tiles cracked from decades of thermal expansion. The roof deck also lacked proper ventilation, which had magnified the stress on the slate. Instead of patching it with cheap replacements, Tom tracked down handmade replicas that matched the original 19th century look, then replaced each broken tile one by one. It was slow, meticulous work requiring specialty tools, but viewers learned something important: even the strongest materials need care, and real slate work demands craftsmanship most people never see. In spring 2005, he was called to another home near the coast where the hardwood floors were warping. Humidity had been cupping the boards and lifting them, and a full replacement would have cost the homeowners a small fortune. Tom refused to rush into demolition. Instead, he dug a 24-inch trench around the room and installed a hidden dehumidification system based on 18th century cellar techniques once used to protect stored grain. Old wisdom combined with modern materials. Within weeks, the moisture dropped. The boards relaxed back into place, and the homeowners avoided roughly $10,000 in future repairs. The method spread quickly among coastal homeowners. It felt like a secret trick only Tom Silva would know. But behind the cameras and clever solutions, the physical toll was rising. After decades of lifting, bending, crawling, and pushing through brutal job sites, Tom's body began to pay the price. In 2007, he underwent 2 major back surgeries within months of each other. Recovery forced him off the show temporarily, but he returned just weeks after the second surgery, moving carefully, wearing braces under his shirts, and adjusting his stance between takes to manage the pain. He never complained, never mentioned it on camera, and viewers never saw the struggle. A later behind-the-scenes special revealed how much he endured just to keep teaching, reminding everyone that craftsmanship demands endurance, and the body pays for every perfect cut you see on screen. By 2010, Tom was still pushing for the balance. He believed in honoring the old while embracing the best of the new. He led a series on energy-efficient windows in a 1920s bungalow where the homeowners wanted warmth and comfort without sacrificing the home's character. Vinyl windows were cheap and trending, but Tom rejected them immediately. Instead, he ordered custom stained mahogany sashes that matched the original interior woodwork, then installed modern airtight seals. Within a year, heating bills dropped nearly 30%, saving the homeowners hundreds of dollars, and yet the house still looked exactly like it had in the 1920s. Tom proved that traditional materials, when built correctly, can outperform modern shortcuts, and that historic homes don't need to look modern to feel modern. In fall 2012, a stormy shoot in Maine pushed him to make another split-second decision. A coastal home was moments away from serious water damage, and the storm was already pounding the roof. Tom grabbed recycled copper flashing, cut it on site, shaped it to the roof edge, and secured it with special fasteners all while rain soaked the crew. It felt like a rescue mission, messy and chaotic, but genius in its simplicity. The clip went viral among DIY enthusiasts because it was fast, affordable, clever, and sustainable. Reusing old copper instead of buying new parts gave it the practical, no-nonsense flair that fans loved. By 2015, Silva Brothers Construction had grown so large and successful that Tom felt it was time to hand the daily operations to family. He passed the reins to his nephew Charlie, the same young carpenter. He once clashed with over corbels, proving how far both the man and the business had come. Tom stepped back from management, but not from teaching, building, or shaping the craft, and the world still didn't know the secret he'd been hiding all along. By 2015, Silva Brothers Construction had grown into a 25-person operation, generating nearly $5 million a year. But even after handing day-to-day leadership to Charlie, Tom never truly stepped back. Every week he visited job sites, walking the floors, checking the details, and quietly inspecting the work like he always had. That habit saved a project in 2016. While reviewing a 2-story addition, he noticed something others missed: a misaligned load-bearing wall. If it had gone unnoticed, the entire structure could have failed. Tom halted the job instantly, corrected the mistake, and prevented what could have been a 6-figure disaster. For the crew, it became a lifelong lesson. Nothing is too small to double-check when people's homes and safety depend on you. In 2018, the entire business shifted because the world was shifting. Demand for green building was exploding, and instead of resisting change, Tom embraced it. He led a solar-integrated garage build in Arlington using bamboo trusses, a renewable material chosen for strength and a low-carbon footprint. Nature delivered the ultimate test when a Category 2 hurricane struck with winds topping 100 miles per hour. The garage held firm without major damage. The project won a regional sustainability award and proved something Tom had believed for years. The future of building isn't about abandoning tradition, it's about bringing its discipline into new horizons. When 2023 arrived, Tom stepped into a building world that looked nothing like the one he had inherited. Technology was racing ahead. Machines were doing work that once required entire teams. And yet Tom never stopped adapting. During a special episode in Austin spotlighting 3D printed homes, Tom didn't watch from the sidelines. He walked straight up to the new printed walls and grabbed a drill. The concrete layers looked smooth and promising, but as he tested the joints himself, he felt the hidden gaps that only human hands could detect. His conclusion was simple but bold. The future wouldn't belong exclusively to machines or tradition. It would be stronger if both worked together. When the episode aired in early 2025, it set off a firestorm. Builders argued for weeks. Some accused him of clinging to outdated ways. Others said he was seeing flaws the rest of the industry was ignoring. But everyone agreed on one thing: Tom Silva had once again forced the world to slow down. Think carefully, and remember that building isn't just about speed or efficiency. It's about responsibility. Then came 2024, and Boston felt electric the moment Tom walked into the Trade Expo for his woodworking masterclass. People had lined up since dawn, stretching around the building in the cold just to see him work. By the time he stepped onto the floor, more than 5,000 people had filled the hall, the largest crowd the expo had ever recorded. Tom didn't rush or perform for the cameras. Instead, he set down a single cherry board, took a quiet breath, and spent the next 2 full days turning it into a dining table entirely by hand. His highlight moment came when he hand-planed for 48 hours straight, the rhythmic scrape of metal against wood echoing through the entire expo hall. Attendees leaned forward as the grain lifted and shimmered under his touch. That demonstration sparked something huge. More than 80% of attendees later said they planned to return to hand-planing, and tool shops reported a 35% spike in traditional tool sales. All of it began with Tom sliding a plane across one board, stroke after patient stroke. But early 2025 brought a challenge that no expo crowd could see coming. In January, while working on a siding job in Massachusetts, Tom fell from a ladder and fractured his hip. Doctors warned him that men in their 70s often take months to walk normally again. He listened carefully, then quietly ignored the timeline. 6 weeks later, he walked back onto Ask This Old House, moving slowly but determined, and used his own accident as a lesson. He introduced viewers to his new ladder routine: small steps, slow climbing, and what he called ladder checkpoints. Every 10 feet he stopped, breathed, checked his balance, then continued. Older DIers wrote him letters saying his honesty and his humility saved them from making the same mistake he made. Soon after returning, he teamed up with his nephew Charlie for a tiny home project in New England. Their goal was bold: zero waste. Every board mattered. They framed the structure entirely with reclaimed bontwood, then turned leftover scraps into brackets, shelves, and interior trim. The build became a 10-part online series that reached more than 1,000 DIers and pushed many to rethink just how much lumber they were throwing away. Charlie later said the real secret wasn't the techniques, it was Tom's lifelong rule: waste nothing. The series became so popular that similar tiny homes started appearing across the region, inspired directly by their careful craftsmanship. Even with all the filming, teaching, and mentoring, Tom was still thinking about something deeper. By late 2025, at 78 years old, he was still showing up at Silva Brothers job sites, still running quality checks, still paying attention to details most people would step right over. Rumors about retirement started whispering around him. Tom shook his head. He said he'd keep building as long as he could lift a tool, and quietly, he began writing his memoir. He wanted to share stories not just about success, but about mistakes, ethics, patience, and the quiet moments that shaped him as a craftsman. One early excerpt described a single bad nail that once caused a home inspection disaster, an incident that changed the way he treated every board afterward. Publishers already expect the book, set for a 2026 release, to be a must-read for builders and fans alike. Away from the spotlight, Tom lived a gentle, rooted life. For more than 50 years, he and his wife Susan attended Portuguese festivals across Massachusetts. Each June, they traveled to the Provincetown Portuguese Festival, an 80-year tradition that drew more than 10,000 visitors in 2025. There, Tom carved wooden rosaries, a craft his grandfather taught him in the 1970s. Organizers often asked him to demonstrate his carving techniques, and many locals saw him as part of the festival itself. As familiar as the music and the food. At home, he retreated into his small Arlington workshop, a space packed with tools from the 1950s and earlier. He restored antique planes, chisels, levels, and square stools that had passed through generations of craftspeople and still carried their stories in the wear of the handles. Tool collectors said pieces like his could sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But Tom never restored them to sell. He restored them because they deserved to live again, to work again, to continue the craft he had spent his life protecting. And it was in that quiet workshop, surrounded by the tools of history, that the world would eventually learn the truth he'd been hiding since 1999. What he'd really been doing with his fortune, and why 3 families had kept his secret for more than 2 decades. His rare distant handsaw from the 1820s was the crown jewel of his workshop, picked up for $50 at a dusty barn auction in 2015, and now worth close to $5,000. But Tom never chased value. He chased history. Whenever he restored antique planes, chisels, or levels, he used materials from their own era, treating each tool like a small rescue mission. Many of the restored pieces he sold, and every dollar went toward trade school scholarships. He believed tools shouldn't sit on shelves, they should change lives. By 2025, he had collected more than 200 vintage saws, forming one of the largest private saw collections in the country. The old distance sat in the center of it all like a museum piece. But even that collection wasn't his biggest secret. Behind the hobby was something far more powerful. Since 1999, Tom had quietly funded fire recovery efforts for families in California and Massachusetts. 3 families rebuilt their homes because of him, fully, completely, with no strings attached. He never took credit, never appeared in photos, never allowed his name to be used. People only learned the truth through eyewitnesses who had seen the Silva Brothers Foundation step in, write checks, deliver materials, and disappear before the cameras arrived. For more than 2 decades, Tom had rebuilt lives the same way he rebuilt homes, quietly, carefully, and with his whole heart. Even without social media, his influence spread everywhere. YouTube carpenters copied his techniques and generated more than 10 million views a year. DIY forums buzzed with debates over his methods. Tool vendors saw entire product lines sell out after he used a particular plane or chisel on camera. Many new carpenters said the same thing. They got into the trade because they watched Tom Silva fix something on television. His steady hands shaped far more than beams and floors, they shaped careers. In April 2024, he stepped onto a different kind of stage when the National Housing Hall of Fame inducted him. Honoring his 38-year journey on this old house, surveys showed that more than 50 million viewers had been inspired to try home projects safely because of him. That honor placed him among the most trusted voices in American construction, a quiet titan who changed the industry without ever raising his voice. And still, even with all the awards and recognition, he kept teaching. Every year he mentored 20 apprentices in a workshop built on patience and precision. Since 2010, more than 250 carpenters had trained under him. Data later showed those apprentices made 15% fewer joinery mistakes than those who hadn't learned his slow, methodical approach. Tom didn't just build buildings, he built a generation that refused shortcuts, respected the craft, and carried his values forward. By July 2025, he began talking about one last project, a final This Old House special. Set to air in 2026, it would be a 90-minute tribute to his life's work, filled with unseen outtakes, on-set memories, co-star interviews, and stories from homeowners whose walls he had rebuilt with his bare hands. Producers were digging through thousands of hours of footage to find the rare moments that defined him, the laughter behind the scenes, the tough lessons, the quiet victories. It was the closing chapter of a career built on honesty, skill, and heart. And for millions of viewers, it would be the farewell of the carpenter who taught America how to build, and how to build the right way.